Welcome back to Internet Capital, the big show. Episode 11 is here today, filming from Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh. You're in Steelers country now, folks. You're in Steelers country. Benjo.
Wow.
I know you're tired today. Just got in on a long flight with not much sleep. You ready to go?
Yeah, I hope so. If you're gonna have to excuse me if any of my takes are a bit subpar, but I think I'm ready.
All right. Well, I'll carry the show if I need to, bud. You just say the word.
All right.
All right.
Well, you just want to start with markets then? I don't even know if we want to pull them up,
Oh,
honestly.
they're bad. Markets are bad. Do not look at markets this week. Oh,
It's a good day. Look at that candle. Okay, I'll share this. I'll share my screen so you guys can see this as well.
that's not a 15-minute candle either.
No. It's
Wow.
a weekly candle.
Yeah, markets have not been good in spite of seemingly kind of positive news on the macroscopic front with rate cuts to be expected coming up. But
That's a weird chart over here, this little area we're in.
yeah, that's like the longest area in the chart that is kind of a ranging area, I guess accumulation area, as traders say.
Yeah.
Or consolidation area?
I feel like we're not using those terms correctly, but perhaps. I don't know. It's interesting to me because crypto still trades in line. A lot of the time the correlations vary, but with equities markets, and the reason equities sold off is because a bunch of companies missed earnings, and economic data was not very good, so people are getting scared about a potential recession moving forward, and things are looking to be slowing down. But for crypto, it doesn't make much sense that it should follow that because Bitcoin doesn't have any earnings. Ethereum sort of has earnings, not really, but the point is it's uncorrelated, so it's kind of weird to see us just dump with them.
Yeah, I thought like in recessions, and that's a good time for crypto if that happens. But
Yeah, well, yeah, Bitcoin's like it's a pessimistic asset for sure. Like if the world kind of blows up, but not to such an extent that you just need guns and provisions, Bitcoin is like the level up from that. That's what you want if rule of law stays relatively stable. So whenever there's recessions, it's true. It's like gold.
okay.
Do you not get that one?
I believe you, but I hope there's some levels between
Well, of
rule
course
of
there's
law and Bitcoin.
No, of course there's levels.
Okay.
Okay, but it's like this. It's like if you live in a state such as like Argentina, Venezuela, wherever the inflation gets extremely out of hand, so that leads to a breakdown of
Societal structures.
civil society, legal enforcement, and things like that. If it completely breaks down, a stupid Bitcoin's not going to do you anything.
Right.
You need guns.
Right.
Yeah, but if it partially breaks down and it's really the economic problems, then you just want hard assets like gold, like Bitcoin,
Real
estate, or
Gotcha.
U.S. dollars, if for now.
For now. Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that's not a good chart. Let's hope next week we see some green.
Probably not. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not really that worried. I think people zoomed in too far. It's like everyone is talking on different time horizons all the time.
Yeah.
And like I just have conviction in the assets I hold over longer time periods. So as long as you're not levered, then it's okay.
Now, this chart looks like it was set up by like a robot that we are just now bouncing off this lower level of support. Let's hope it holds. Thoughts?
I don't. What were you referring to?
The lower level of support right here.
The robot?
Oh, yeah, like a robot did this. It's like very delineated right there at 3,000, 29.90.
Yeah, weird looking chart again. I don't know what to make of this. I think underlying catalyst for ETH, like we got better than expected demand for the ETFs.
Yes,
we have all
we'll talk
these
about
other
that.
fundamental catalysts, which we could say again week after week, which is why if you're an investor, just sit tight. But in the short term, if you have any cash, I would be buying here. I really don't understand. Like, let's say we do have a bit more of a move down. If we break down below this range, I don't know, fall somewhere between here for a bit. Like, it's really not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things if you're bullish categorically on crypto over the next like couple of years. So I don't know. People are just very scared because we dumped a lot. So.
All right. Well, again, let's hope we see some green next week. And next week, if it's still this red, we're going to have to zoom in if we find a green candle.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think we would need to. All right, let's get on to the news of the week. First thing on the agenda looked like another tweet from our friend Vance Spencer. I found this one pretty interesting, basically talking about how Bitcoin and ETH have delineated themselves from all the other alts because they're starting to get some acceptance in traditional finance.
Let's just read it for the podcast listeners. So Vance says market is starting to bifurcate between coins competing for TradFi inflows, ETH Bitcoin, and those competing for crypto Twitter flows, Sol, alts, etc. I would expect the latter category to become more competitive as we see high-profile L1s like Barra, Monad, etc. launch and compete for crypto Twitter flows. We had 3 to 4 100 billion L1s last cycle, AVAX, Sol, Luna. So he says there's lots of room, in my opinion, in that category for other players, which I tend to agree with. This is what we said like from the very beginning. A couple months ago, we said this cycle is driven by the institutions. It's the TradFi guys. So it really is. I like the distinction that he's making.
Yeah, it's like there's the grown-up table and the kids table now.
Yeah, I saw. I was listening to our friends at Alpha Alpha podcast too. Mm-hmm. And they were talking on their show this week about how a lot of people are looking at like Solana's on-chain metrics, like the users that they have, the volumes that you have, and whenever you really dig into it, most of it is really just like bots or like these meme coin type scams. And kind of whenever people are using these metrics to say, hey, look, Sol is undervalued. If you like weight it the same as ETH's market cap and then scale up by the metrics compared to ETH's, then it should be valued way higher. But again, the activity that's happening on Solana or these other chains, for instance, is very different from BlackRock and others building on Ethereum. Is just going to be my comment there.
Oh, that's a good comment.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that gets to the point we talked about last week, where all of these chains have their own roles, and you know, Solana could have a perfectly legitimate, good money-making role that's not, you know, securing and tokenizing the assets of Wall Street.
Well, it's like a casino. So it's like casinos aren't trading at like 300 times earnings. That's just not how they trade in public equities markets. So Solana, if you're going to call it a casino, its valuation should be lower. But I don't know. We'll see. It has been the favorite asset of this cycle so far. So maybe we're just coping. Continues to outperform. That's very possible. Mm-hmm. But again, as an investor, you got to move out your time horizon. If you fall into a coma for 10 years, what will you hold? I would not hold Solana. Just my opinion.
Gotcha. All right, next. The U.S. government, similar to Germany, is moving some of their Bitcoin they got in this. I guess they seized it, right, in the Silk Road scam or Silk Road.
Do you know what that was?
Yeah, it was like a message board, early message board thing.
No, it was like a black market.
Oh.
It was a black market for mostly drugs, and Bitcoin was used as payment on here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was black market for drugs and a bunch of other stuff. There's probably some pretty bad stuff going on here.
But we seized it?
The U.S. government seized it, yeah. And that's a whole issue because the founder, what's his name? I always forget his name. But he is in prison, and one of, Ross Ulbricht. So he was the founder of it. You've heard the name, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, Trump has promised to expedite his sentence if he's reelected, and it's become a very hot topic political issue. But he helped create this exchange, and it's unclear whether he partook in any illegal activities other than creating this exchange. So very deep crypto lore Silk Road is. But yes, the government is moving this Bitcoin they have, and this comes in the same week that Trump announced that he wanted to build a strategic Bitcoin stockpile. So it sounds like the Dems are just trying to do the opposite of what Trump's doing, just because out of spite. I don't know.
Well, they may not have much time left.
Yeah.
Although here in the U.S., there is some reinvigoration in the political landscape with Kamala kind of gaining some traction. So we shall see. But it would be a huge upset, in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, this is interesting. This is what scared the market off in the beginning of the week and started the sell-off. And then the sell-off was really exacerbated by terrible equities earnings and bad economic data. So this is just another looming sell pressure that we have to deal with in the markets for the next few weeks.
Markets are dysfunctional. I remember 3 months ago that bad economic pressure was what everyone wanted so that interest rates would drop. And now bad economic information comes out and everyone hates it.
Well, it's like, it depends on your view, I guess.
Well, my view is markets only go up.
That's not the case, obviously, but it's I think it's more the thing. It's like if the American economy falls into a recession, consumers have less money in their pockets to play with, to gamble with, and most of these crypto coins, especially the ones without the institutional flows, Bitcoin and ETH basically, they really rely on consumers having extra money in their pockets, just going on saying, yeah, screw it, I'll put $50 into this coin on Coinbase or whatever. So that's kind of the only reason I see why a recession should really impact crypto, but yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
I'm going to skip this one. I actually don't care about this one at all. Right. BitClout founder, it was like an early social network on crypto, but the SEC is still going after crypto companies, but they're choosing at least some better ones now. They got BitBoy too, actually. By the way, I don't know if you saw that.
No.
Yeah, so they're going after this guy. I don't know much about him, and BitBoy, but the SEC is still active, interestingly. So I just wanted to skip that one. Saylor, I guess this was at the Nashville conference this past week. Saylor had Bitcoin price predictions. I saw some of these on my timeline. I think his bear case was something nuts, like $2 million per Bitcoin by 2040. Yeah. Okay, this is something different, but yeah, his predictions were like 2 million, 5 million, or 10 million by 2040 or something like that.
This one in particular is he's just filed to raise $2 billion more, I guess, in bond sales to buy more Bitcoin.
It says he's issuing equity.
Oh, all right, there you go.
Which is interesting because he usually does do like convertible notes. I thought so. It's interesting that he's still doing this.
He's just doing what he does. I mean, I think to some extent that market is nice that they have Saylor every 2 weeks, and I saw this in a tweet, every 2 weeks, basically buying at market prices, tons and tons and tons of Bitcoin, which does help to support the price a little bit.
Nice.
Goldman Sachs, you don't have to pull that up, but they now are kind of reversing course and says it could be a good store of value. Bitcoin, that is, yes.
Yeah, a lot of people are changing course again. I got in a Twitter fight about why Bitcoin is a store of value earlier this week, and
I read that. You were right.
Yeah, I know I was right, but it's pretty simple. Digital gold, people, but it's very interesting to see TradFi folks finally come around when like the analogy was pretty simple the whole time. It didn't really change. It just kind of, in my mind, highlights the herd mentality that's characteristic of a lot of finance, the crypto and traditional finance. So now that good old friend David Solomon at Goldman Sachs sees that his friend Larry and others are on the Bitcoin train, he decides to join now, I guess, which is interesting. Kind of interesting insight into the psychology of markets and what drives a lot of these movements over the short term. Economic data. As we mentioned, economic data was bad. So basically what happened off the top of my brain, there were way less jobs created, and it's monthly jobs report in the last month. It was like 120,000 versus 174,000 expected. So that was pretty bad. What else did we have? We had unemployment ticked up also, I believe, and then, like we said, a bunch of companies missed earnings. So.
Yeah, and Federal Open Market Committee did not lower rates, but the head, Jerome Powell,
the chairman,
said that essentially, some weasel words, but something to the effect of that rate cuts in September are back on the table. Everyone's expecting that's a 0.25% rate cut, and people are hoping that by the end of the year we end up with somewhere between 0.5 and 0.75 to 1% rate cut in the Fed funds rate.
Yeah, the futures markets are pricing in almost guaranteed rate cuts in the fall by September.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Here's the Dixie, the US dollar index, which is interesting because the Dixie is actually down quite a bit this week in the same week when crypto prices are down, which typically you'll see an inverse relationship. So this is pretty interesting. I guess maybe it's because people were expecting a rate cut perhaps at this meeting, but...
Can you explain this to me and the rest of our viewers and listeners, please?
The Dixie, what it measures.
What it measures. Yeah, what it
it's
measures.
it's a measure of the dollar's strength against a basket of other fiat currencies, so like euros or Swiss francs or Japanese yen, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's like a really interesting index to see. Like, we denominate all of our trading activities in crypto, at least we do because we're American, in dollars.
Yeah.
So whenever the dollar is strong, it's more difficult for other assets to appreciate against it, basically.
Gotcha.
So if you look at this and you look at other like metrics like global liquidity,
Way up.
what's that?
Global liquidity is way up.
Yeah, and that'll keep expanding as interest rates grow, go down. And if we get any like really terrible recessionary impacts from leaving rates high for so long and something breaks, the Fed's going to backstop it with like these programs, such as like the bank term funding program that they did for Silicon Valley Bank and others, to just straight up inject liquidity directly into the system, and not just use interest rates as their primary tool. So Dixie is a good like kind of macro chart and to keep your eye on, as well as global liquidity and some of these other.
And on that note, I read in another tweet that in the past 30 days, the Fed has printed something like 10 billion. Could that be right? No,
What do you
100 billion in money, in loans, in the past month to take the national debt up to like 35 billion or something. And there's some crazy stat like that.
I did see the debt, national debt hit an all-time high again. Nothing else?
Nothing else.
Okay. What else was interesting? I guess here, this is actually what I got in a Twitter fight about here. So Wyoming Senator Cynthia Lummis actually introduced a bill in the Senate to acquire Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset for the United States. And I guess the bill has the United States purchasing up to 5% of Bitcoin's total supply, which is a lot, but actually the United States owns 20% of gold's total supply, which is pretty interesting. Fact, yeah, so some people are like saying 20.
Yeah.
But this was pretty cool. We actually saw legitimate legislation proposing to buy Bitcoin for the United States, which is kind of crazy.
Is that going to be actually taken up on the floor of the House?
Not sure.
Okay. It's got to get out of committee first and all that stuff.
Yes, I did not read deeply into this. I've known of Cynthia Lummis for a while because she's been a big crypto advocate. But she's pretty serious, pretty persistent with this. So,
well, she's actually a senator from a very red, traditional red state, meaning not fringe issues, but concerned about debt and the American dream and freedom and things like that. I think it's Wyoming. Is she from Wyoming?
yeah.
So to have her, bring something up like this, I think is more meaningful than others anyway, if others would do it.
Yeah, no, I think she has some real reach, so hopefully this can get through. We'll see what happens. It's a Trump promise, so if he does get elected, I guess we'll see if he actually does it. That's going to move the needle more than anything else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see about that. But that was also cool. Coinbase reported 1.4 billion in Q2 revenue. Do you know anything about this? Did that exceed expectations, or?
I read that article, and it was only like a 15% increase from either year over year or the last quarter, which I think was disappointing because the stock price lost about 15 to 20% of its value this week. Went from the past couple weeks from the 260s down to like 204.
Okay.
So it was not what people were thinking, but it is fairly highly correlated to the market overall.
Yeah, that could be a big driver if I traded down. I'm not sure if I could just think about it, like Q2 was actually probably pretty decent because we did have a lot of trading activity like early in Q2. But yeah, interesting.
Yep.
Let's see. Yeah, I saw USDT had some insane amount of profit last quarter as well. They're actually a private company, so I don't know why that was reported, to be honest.
Yeah, was crazy. I mean, basically they have 100.
They have 60 employees.
60 employees, and it's about
net profit was 5.2 billion in the first half of the year. That's nuts.
Yeah, So they make essentially, what's the math there? 100 million per employee in the first half of the year.
Yeah, the stablecoin businesses are good business,
Yeah.
and Circle's going public sometime this year, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
That'll be a good business. All right.
Ben, real quick, go to Optimism's Twitter, and while you do, I'll talk about it a little bit. So today, just an hour and a half ago, I saw Optimism put out their July month and statistics about the use of Optimism and all their SuperChain in transaction metrics, in revenue metrics, in total number of chain metrics, total number of user metrics, and it compared Optimism and the SuperChain to all the other EVM chains, which, that's it, EVM, yeah, ecosystem update, which if you look at the charts in here, are remarkably like what traditional financial companies do in presenting their data, which was good to see that these companies are realizing that at some point it's got to be more than hype. They got to make money, and at least Optimism seems like they're moving towards that in providing the public, and I don't think they have to, but providing the public metrics on how much Optimism itself, as well as their SuperChain partners, are doing in all these metrics, and where that stands compared to Ethereum as a whole, which was really, really neat to see.
Cool. I don't see it. Is it like in one of these?
Scroll to the top again. It was.
I don't know if it was this one, to be honest.
That's
okay.
fine. No big deal.
Share it.
Yeah.
That's probably this one.
Yeah, it pulls up a chart. Oh, SuperChain Health Dashboard. That's exactly it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is definitely for the TradFi folks. It's funny.
100%. So there's good stuff in there. Talking about growth, their L2s, how many are built on the op stack in general, who's part of SuperChain. One thing in here, and you don't have to stop, you can keep scrolling, that although transactional growth stalled or even declined from at least earlier in the year, the developer growth on the SuperChain has continued almost linearly expanding, which I think is good in the long term. Same way with maybe it was user growth, I think I saw, has continued to expand. Even though there's not as many transactions, not as much dollar amount, the use case is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And my suspicion is that for all the credible chains, there's probably data like this. Throughout the ones that depended on airdrops, things like that. But chains like the SuperChain are doing some good stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else on here you wanted to mention there? We had a few more things, but I didn't really have much else. Let me think.
Oh, what about the compound governance attack? I saw that and didn't really understand how that can happen. Is that like a proposal was voted on by a majority of people?
Well, no one votes in DAOs is the problem, basically. So the governance attacks are pretty easy to do if there are a small set of whales, which in this case there were, that have a significant number of tokens and can probably strike a couple of backdoor deals with other whales to get them to delegate them their tokens for like a certain round or something. That's what happened here. So they got enough voting power to single-handedly win a vote, just because there's so much apathy in the governance system for Compound. There's like 10 voters in the average DAO governance form.
Oh, wow.
So they didn't really need that much, even though they are whales. It is significant. But basically, they voted to move like $24 million in comp tokens from Compound DAO's treasury to a protocol that they controlled, essentially. And they would, I believe, be able to just steal the money directly. So they voted on it and it passed. So per the rules, it's not illegal. Like, this is where it gets fuzzy. So it's a whole issue right now with the developer team for Compound threatening to use this other centralized multi-sig that they have to stop this proposal from going through, which is an emergency type of thing that they have. And then there's also talks of the core team actually airdropping a new token to all users who did not vote or voted against that adversarial proposal. So it's interesting. It's just people kind of forgot about DAOs. I feel like they were big last cycle a bit more, but they're still out there and they have some pretty significant implications for a lot of protocols you use. So you should know about them, but just no one participates. And this is an example of how that can go wrong.
That actually is pretty interesting. It sounds like they did nothing wrong. It's just apathy.
Yeah, I mean I wouldn't say it's not ethical or like in principle it's not correct, but it's technically allowed per the rules. So
yeah, well, I mean, everyone, like, to me, where a big positive of all of this blockchain stuff is, well, it's in software, it's written in code. Well, if it's written in code, they should be allowed to do this. Otherwise, you screwed the code up and fix the code. They used human nature, greed. They got other whales on board, and they used the process to their favor. And
but this is also why we get a bad look, though. We get a bad reputation.
Yeah, it is.
Grifters, so it's like, come on.
Well, let's get better developers out there to fix this. Okay. I mean, because I don't think you can have the emergency backdoor all the time. And maybe now it's fine, and maybe it was the compound guys knew stuff like this would happen because they couldn't have a great first generation of code, but eventually that has to be gone.
Well, the code's fine, I think, for the actual protocol. The problem is governance. The idea of DAOs kind of sucks. DAOs just blow right now. They just aren't good is the problem. Like the idea that you should just be able to vote on the rules for, the random token holders should just be able to vote proportionally to the amount of tokens that they hold to decide what this protocol does is just like a terrible idea. And like Optimism does, you don't know what Optimism does?
Well, okay, stop there though. But the initial description you have is just like shareholder voting on traditional finance, with the exception of there's much more diversity in the user base, and there are smart professionals that own and control most of those votes.
Yeah, and the shareholders aren't running the business. They're not deciding how to run the business. You have an executive team who does that, and then you have a board of directors, and then you have the shareholders. And it's kind of this checks and balances system, and this is literally just like let randos with tokens decide what to do.
So this is core democracy. This is literally democracy.
Yes.
Causes business decisions.
Yeah, and it has not worked.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, tell me what Optimism does.
They have a two-house system. You should know this. You're an Optimism Super Bowl.
I know. Well, I'm on the revenue. I'm in it for the money. You tell me about the
well, you need to know what you're buying, sir.
All right, you know what? I made fun of all the Luddites out there. Well, I am a governance Luddite, so help me out.
They have a two-house system. It's bicameral.
Bicameral.
Yes.
Okay, and?
One is the token house, and one is the citizens house. So they do have token-based voting, but then this is checked, and you can look into how they do it exactly by a house of citizens, which consisted of various community members throughout, who were early to L2s, various crypto Twitter personalities, and also engineers, developers within the ecosystem, not just on Optimism itself, but on protocols within L2s, prominent DeFi founders, things like this. And then they have separated responsibilities and can check each other. So this is one interesting thing. And this was a big talk, I feel like, going into the cycle, new forms of governance. We need new governance. And now just the bull market started and everyone kind of stopped caring. But if that can continue to be built out, I think it could be interesting.
Very cool. That's nice. Good stuff.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you don't even need governance, though, for a lending protocol. It's done. You don't need it. It can run, I guess you have to tune the risk parameters, but then once it's out there running, you don't need to govern anything anymore. And I think that's the desired end state for crypto. It's supposed to be decentralized, non-custodial, non-confiscatable, all of these things. So do that to the maximum extent possible, or else things like this governance attack happens, and then you're just role-playing this decentralization game, which it's not at all.
Right.
It's 3 guys voted to take all the coins, and then the team just stopped them, basically. So it's a little silly.
Yeah, that is a little silly when you put it that way. Yeah. I agree. All right, Ben, is that it for the week? We're right at a half an hour. We kind of sped this up because we felt like the hour-long shows were a little tedious for our listeners and viewers. if you guys like this shorter format, you should let us know. If you like the longer format, let us know there too. We can certainly go more in depth on some of that. Still have some big news in the pocket that we can't quite get to yet, but we hope to this next week or the week after. But good things here. Oh, I know what I wanted to say, and we just tweeted this. The newsletter has now reached 100 subscribers, which is kind of cool. That's starting to get some traction. It's a lot of the stuff we talk about here, but Benjo does a nice job going into more detail and a little bit more structured, I'd say. So that's reached 100 subscribers and growing, so we're really excited about that. Go check it out at internetcapital.xyz. Subscribe, it's free. You know, I'm sure we're going to have ads at some point in there, but it's free to sign up. You never have to pay for it, which is kind of some neat stuff, and I guess something I never really thought would happen because we're doing this kind of for fun, so that's cool. Ben, you have anything else?
No, I'm going to get some sleep.
Yeah, he's going to get some sleep. Next week, we are actually going to be back here again in Gibsonia, Indiana, or I'm sorry, Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. I'm losing track of my states. Maybe at a new venue if the weather's a little bit better outside, maybe we'll do that. But yeah, we'll see you then. Internet Capitalists, have a great week.
All right, see ya.